Hey, I'm the NetherRealm Nobody, and this is the Mortal Kombat Defenders of the Realm Episode 3 Acid Tongue Review. My God, these titles, let me tell you. Alrighty, so, Acid Tongue. In this one, we get Reptile, sort of, and his army, and they end up kidnapping Sonya. And so Jax has to go try to save her. But while that's going on, Shiva and her army. I love that everybody has an army. Like every single villain has an army underneath them. It's great. But Shiva and her army are coming over. So, you know, the defenders got to defend against that. So that's the basic premise plot of this episode. Alrighty, so we left off last time with another alert, and this time it winds up being, and I forget the name of the race, but they're the reptilian race that Reptile belongs to. So in the games, we were always told that Reptile was the last of his kind. And so, turns out, apparently not, there's a whole other group of them. It's weird because right off the bat, they're like, who's that? And it's like, okay, you guys are following the events of the movie, part 1, which Reptile was in that, and yet Liu Kang's acting like, who's this guy? And you're also following the games, like, you know, we're following the events of part 3, and Reptile was in part 2, which means you've already seen him. They knew who Baraka was, so it's like, the fact that they are like, oh, wow, who's, you know, who are these guys? It's like, do you not know? Now, it is funny that the entire race is just green ninjas, like every one of them is wearing the same getup. However, they don't mention it by Reptile. In fact, they even kind of act like they even say, like, you know, I thought Reptile's race was extinct. Maybe I misheard. Maybe he said this Reptile race is extinct. I don't know. But the main villain, his name is like Coma Guy, which sounds like Coma Guy. I don't know. But Coma Guy. But they go back and forth on his name throughout the episode. They will call him Reptile and Coma Guy off and on. So, again, it's like, you could have just made it simple, just made this guy Reptile with a reptilian race, but they didn't. But I guess they tried to retcon it midway through the episode. I don't know. But anyways, we're introduced to these guys. And so, as they're kind of running amok, you know, everybody lands their jets, and we get the Kung Fu fighting. Again, my boy Stryker looking strong. I'm so happy that Stryker is doing good in this show. So, in this one, right off the bat, you know, Reptile, they used the invisibility grate, which Scorpion ripped off in the last episode, but whatever, it's, you know, properly used here. And we get the acid spit from Reptile. We get a lot of the moves, like Sonya does her little leg hurricanrana thing in this one as well. We see the trimmer, the bicycle kick. I mean, we get a few of the moves here. Stryker using his nightstick to beat some ass. Sub-Zero freezing motherfuckers. So, anyways, but during the acid spit, it hits Jax in the arm. Of course, he has those metal arms. Well, it's eating through the metal. And he ends up, you know, for some reason, he takes, like, the chip out that has, like, everything he needs, the fucking thing, and he throws it, or he hides it behind a rock. I don't know why he did that. But then he's like, I can't find it later on. Beside the point. Either way, though, his robotic arms are now useless. But then Sonya helps him. But then he gets embarrassed. Like, this dude, he's acting like he can't get his dick up or something like that. He's just like, oh my God, this is the worst thing ever. I need my metal arms. I can't fight without my metal. And it's like, dude, you fought part 2 without your metal arms. You're fine. I know this cartoon is kind of on a different continuity level than the video game. But still, yeah, it's like, but, you know, he's just like, I can't do it without it. And then, like, he gets mad at Sonya. Like, at one point, they're like, everybody's getting in jets ahead now, and there's another alert. There's another rift, something going on. Because what happens is when they end up beating the reptilian's ass, and when they throw Kama Guy, or when they throw the rest of them away, Kama Guy is going to go back in there. Stryker goes to seal it up, and it doesn't quite seal perfectly, and he's struggling with it. He don't know why. But he gets it sealed up, I guess, enough, and he's like, oh, I did it. Let's get out of here. As they leave, Coma Guy steps out of the rift. He's like, I'll get you guys. He uses the same kind of speech that Scorpion used, And it's like they didn't even try to give him like a weird lisp or utilize the S's when he's talking. I remember in the comic book, they would use the S's a lot. Like, I'm going to strike, strike. The S's would be drawn out a little bit. Anyways, beyond all that, so they make him sound generic as hell. Whatever. We're kind of getting used to that with villains on this show. So, as they're leaving, the Defenders, Jax is all embarrassed that he lost his metal arm. He's like, I'm going to ride with Stryker. So I'm thinking, okay, Sub-Zero is going to switch places with him, right? No, they go 3 deep in this fighter jet. Liu Kang and Katana go in theirs. So, like, Sonya's just by herself, and I'm like, wow, dick move. Like, really? So, anyways, they end up going back to the thing, and Nightwolf can't fix it. He's like, unfortunately, that chip you had in your arm, that controls everything. And that's a specific chip, and we don't just have it on inventory. So, unless you get that chip back, nothing we can do. Well, turns out Sonya Blade has gone back to that island to find that chip for him. Because she's a good... And this one, she's actually decent. She's not just a straight-up cunt like she has been in the last few episodes. Like, now, she's back. She's friendlier. She says combat time again. She's in her element. And, of course, Jax is like, all right, great. Find it. Well, it turns out she does find it. But, boom, she gets ambushed by Coma Guy. Why Coma Guy didn't have the rest of the reptilians on his side, I don't know. But he doesn't. I guess the rift was just kind of open enough for him to get through. But while this is going on, we find out, holy shit, there's a rift over here, and it turns out it's Shiva and Shokan's coming through. And so they're like, okay, Jax, you need to go get Sonya, make sure she's okay. Kind of weird they didn't send him a second person. They're like, go take care of it yourself. And the whole time, he's like very open about how I don't want to go because I don't have my metal arms. Like, he whines so much in this episode. Like, it was getting annoying, actually. It was getting really bad. I was like, dude, quit your bitching. Just fucking go, Your friend, your partner, the person you initially risked your life to travel to the Outworld to rescue is now in trouble again. And you're just like, I need my metal arms. I don't know. It was a bit annoying. But he goes. Nightwolf offers to go with the rest of the Defenders, but they turn him down and said, listen, Raiden's like, no, listen, you need to stay here in case someone tries to come after our base. So then they're like, well, Raiden, you're going to have to get your hands dirty and join us here. So, anyways, the Defenders go off to face off with Shiva and them. I'll split the story up into 2 different places here now, just to kind of whatever, to get, make it simple instead of just bouncing back and forth. Because it does, it goes back and forth between both. Sorry, it's wintertime and I get itchy, even down here in the Nether Realm. So, Jax makes it to the thing, and of course, it turns out Sonya has been kidnapped. He finds her little wrist communicator thingy, and he's feeling bad. He's like, oh my god, she got kidnapped because of me. So, Nightwolf's trying to talk him up like, hey man, it's all, the power's in here. It wasn't in your metal arms. Which I'm starting to debate now because honestly, the first thing he does is there's a door that leads to this castle. And it's an abandoned castle, but he's just like, they're up there. Why he's assuming that, I don't know. I would assume that we would have took her back to where the hell the reptilians came from, but whatever. So, he tries to use the door. It's locked. He uses a giant boulder. He can't smash it. So it's like, yeah, those metal arms actually was their power. Like, you ain't got dick without them. So anyways, he ends up going back and scaling the cliff to get up to the top of the mountain to this abandoned castle. He gets up there, him and I'm just going to call him Reptile. I know he's Kama guy, technically, but him and Reptile has fight. And, for the most part, it's just Reptile spitting acid as he tries to avoid it. At one point, the whole time, Sonya's like backseat driving. She's like, use your brains, quit trying to use your muscles. And Reptile spits on a rock, and he uses the acid to like melt the cuffs that Sonya's attached to. Which, it's like, it works, but sometimes like, it's melting the metal, where you're not afraid it's going to drip on her skin. I don't know. But she does break free. They end up beating up Kama Guy, and then they end up sending him back through the portal and getting rid of him or whatever. No, they don't. Not yet. I forgot. They kidnap him. So, they beat him up, and they tie him up and take him with him. I forgot about that. Sorry. So, we cut back to Liu Kang, Katana, Stryker, and Sub-Zero. They're fighting Shiva and the Shokans. They're in, like, this underground mine. And so, as they're fighting, Raiden shows up to help. And for the whole time, they're like, why don't you just blast these motherfuckers? And Raiden's like, I can't because this mine's going to collapse at any moment. And there's like all these barrels of explosives around. So he has to fight hand to hand like a mere mortal as well. The Shokons proved to be a lot more difficult. They end up, for the most part, kicking ass. Now, early on, they're able to kind of defend themselves against a few and throw them back into a portal, but for the most part, Shiva and her team are doing pretty good. However, once the structure of the mine is about to collapse, Shiva retreats her men, which is kind of cool that, with the Tarkatans, or nomads, and Reptile, and the other reptiles, and the cybernetic ninjas from the Lin Kuei, and even the undead army of Scorpion, every one of those guys just look a carbon copy of each other. There was no difference. But here the Shokons are shown to be very different. There was no two Shokons that looked alike. You had one dude that had an eye patch. You had one dude that had a Fu Manchu. You had a dude who's in a white outfit. Some had gladiator helmets on. I mean, they were very distinct amongst themselves, and I like that attention to detail. It's kind of cool that there weren't just a bunch of generic Shokons showing up. So that was kind of cool. Anyways, so Shiva and her group retreat, and then just as Jax and Sonya are showing up, the mines collapse. And they're just like, holy crap, are they dead? But turns out, nope, our defenders walk out, Raiden teleports out, and yeah, they're safe. And then, of course, he ends up throwing him the reptile, and then of course Raiden disposes of him in a portal, sending him back to wherever or off to whatever dimension. And that's how we end the episode. With I forgot, Jax does get his metal arms back, but he's like, listen, this is my strength, but I can still use my intelligence as well. Which is yeah, you probably need to, because you couldn't open a door. Probably need your metal arms. So Episode 3, Acid Tongue, is probably my least favorite in the series so far. And it wasn't the storyline wasn't bad. I enjoyed seeing, even though the whole Reptile debacle was kind of weird, just use Reptile. Quit trying to shoehorn other characters or whatever into this. And quit shoehorning them in there and then refer to him as Reptile anyway. Reptile's not a name that should be interchangeable. Reptile is one guy. So, I don't know. But it was cool seeing the Shokons, and I like seeing Shiva, who looks very dominant. I feel like Shiva never gets that respect. She's in part 3, and then she's gone until, Armageddon, if I'm not mistaken. And it's that's very unfair. Now, beyond that, I don't know. Maybe they brought her back and showed her the proper respect, but she always kind of got crapped on. She was considered the jobber of the Shokons, in my opinion. And here, she seems very all-powerful. And her army did, too. They weren't just, the Putty Warriors from Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. No, they were an entire group of badasses that gave our defenders a run for their money. Very solid. For me, I think the reason why this episode is kind of lacking is mainly because the A-plot is all about Jax whining about his arms. And I was just sick of hearing him cry. He was just moping. And it's dude, you're a chosen one. Stryker's a guy who has no abilities. He should be the one moping that he didn't have dick. You still have strength and, army level training. Stryker's just a beat cop from, New York. He ain't got shit going on. You are special forces. And yet, he whines the entire episode. And that really brought it down for me. But beyond that, I don't know. Still a decent story, still not bad. I'm just saying this is probably my least favorite episode thus far. But anyways, that was Acid Tongue. As always, guys, let me know what you guys think of these individual episodes. I feel like people will always kind of review this in, short form. They kind of just discuss the entire episode or the entire season and break out key points. You don't get too many people going episode by episode. I'm not saying they don't. There's a few out there that do, but for the most part, when I did my research, it's just very few people are actually taking the time to watch episode by episode. So I would love to hear your guys' thoughts on this. Am I wrong for the reptile thing? I don't know. Either way, guys, that's all I got. Thank you for watching. Till next time.